Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Awakened Minds, where we take a look at what it means to have human experience while exploring science, spirituality, psychology, and metaphysics. I'm your host, Tiffany, and today I want to explore the fascinating topic, Journey into Consciousness Medicine, bridging quantum physics and the healing arts with Julie Williams. So welcome, Julie. Can you share your journey and how you developed consciousness medicine and what inspired or motivated you to explore this field?
Sure. Thanks, Tiffany. Thanks for having me on. Consciousness medicine was developed from really, my life's journey, both my scientific background. So I'm a geneticist by education, and I worked in research for a long time, having that strong scientific basis. And then in my own personal growth, I was taking a variety of different certifications. When I experience something, I like to learn about it.
Mm-hmm.
So things that were effective in my personal growth, I'd study it. So I started collecting different certifications, knowing I wanted to leave my corporate science job because that environment wasn't as healthy as I wanted and wanted to change my career. So I was seeking some form of modality that I was meant to go and do, right? And ultimately, after collecting almost a dozen different certifications, it came to me that I'm supposed to put all of those together into my own practice,
I love
and
that.
yeah, it was a real, it's kind of a funny story because I had this master that I was studying with, thinking
Mhm.
that his work was the work that I was meant to be doing. And he had these different levels of, beginner, advanced, and then master, which was the highest level. And, if there's a trajectory, I want to, go
Mhm.
all the way. So one day, I was doing all this beautiful work and amazing healing results. And I went up to him and I said, okay, I think I'm ready to be a master practitioner now, like, wanting him to dub me, right?
Mhm.
And he said, nope, you're not ready yet.
Mm.
And I walked away and I went, huh, well, if I'm not a master at his work, I'm a master at something.
Mhm.
And that's that moment of boom. Okay, that's the moment consciousness medicine was born.
That is beautiful, and I absolutely love that. I love that you owned your power in that, and you didn't let somebody else kind of define your destiny and your path in that. Could you explain, kind of in layman's terms, how consciousness medicine operates and intersects with the quantum physics and sacred healing arts?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, I mean, modern medicine has been around for what, since the late 1800s or something, right?
Mhm.
And before that, what did people do when they got sick? Right? There was, the shamans, really,
Yeah.
or they were the ones who healed. So, you know, traditional medicine is based on Newtonian physics, what we can see, what is reproducible, and, statistically significant scientifically. I get
Mhm.
that. That was my life for a long time, right? Experiments and protocols and hypothesis and getting the results and the statistics, it has to be observable,
Yeah.
right? So, and this is what allopathic or traditional medicine has been based upon. So, expanding your awareness to what is not visible, which is what quantum physics is.
Mhm.
Newtonian physics is what we can observe, and quantum physics is the unobservable, the science of the subatomic levels. And so, when I first discovered the principles of quantum physics, the light bulb came on of, oh my gosh, this science proves what we have known to be true about subtle energy healing techniques, the
Mhm.
power of intention, the power of prayer, the power of meditation, all of these things that can promote healing. Quantum physics explains it.
Yeah.
So I dove a little bit deeper into it, and thought, wow, like everything wave particle duality,
Mhm.
things exist as a particle of reality and a wave of potential. So when we're healing, bringing it into the healing frame with our conscious awareness, intention, presence, we can become a bridge and a still point between what's manifested in reality and what exists in infinite potential. Because
Mhm.
science says that's what the universe is made up of, right? Is this
Yep.
infinite potential source of energy, and manifested reality is just one part of that. And so that's, utilizing the principles of quantum physics grounds consciousness medicine in science, so it's not
Mhm.
just a crystally jingly, here we go, right?
Yeah.
And some of my scientific friends, when this was first coming to me, said, Julie, what? You're a scientist, for goodness sake. What are you doing with all this crystally jingly stuff? And I'm like, it's science, right? Like,
Yeah.
let's talk about it, right? So, so there's a few main principles of quantum physics that supports, consciousness medicine, bringing it into the healing frame. And that is, how do we shift realities? How do we create and discreate, the observer dependent effect? What we observe, we create, right? The power of intention. So as a scientist and a healer, I love it in that intersection when science comes together and healing arts are saying the same thing. And so that's the kind of weaving those two together. And I find that, like I say, it really grounds the work, and it allows people to be able to sort of believe it's true. Because when we talk about the unseen or energetic modalities, if we're just sitting in a conscious presence, which is what consciousness medicine is, and creates a healing effect, I don't know. I didn't really see anything. I don't know if I felt anything, but if I've got this whole thing of, well, quantum physics says it's possible, and we as humans have the power to access that quantum field and affect that quantum field. That's proven, right?
Yeah.
In the placebo effect, for example, right? The mind-body connection. If we believe it's going to work, it will. So that's ingrained in our humanness. And then together with quantum physics, it really allows people to be able to go, oh, okay, well, it's not about whether I can do it or not, whether it's true. It is a truth. I can do it. And it really allows people to access that place of healing, empowerment for themselves as well.
That's amazing. I'm really hearing like the gap that you're filling between these two worlds of really grounding it in for somebody who might not be completely aware or open to some of the more, I use the word maybe metaphysical concepts of the healing journey and healing process. So I just love your method and your perspective and insight on how you're really grounding that in so everybody can really understand it. How would you say that these principles interact within the healing modality?
Of the healing modality with consciousness medicine, the principles in consciousness medicine are just, yes. So as far as okay, I'll explain it this way. When I was doing all these different certifications, from physical to energetic to emotional to ancestral, all of these different paths into healing, what I noticed is there was a place that healing happened, right? Independent of the way that you came in, there was this space, sacred space, if you want to call it, or healing space, heart space. It goes by a lot of different names. But I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. This space, whether I come at it from counseling or massage or Reiki, it happens, right? So I started to study that presence of being. I call it the presence of healing, which is essentially a meditative state that you can train yourself to access, like a flipping of a switch, that allows for that still point, I call it, between infinite potential and manifested reality, right? And being able to, as a practitioner, to navigate that space, and be able to release disturbances and bring in harmony. Because as natural state beings, we're looking for equilibrium, homeostasis, we call that in science, right? Our system wants homeostasis, it wants equilibrium. And a disturbance in the field takes a lot more effort and energy to hold over time. So when you offer the system, right, a more harmonious option, the natural, yes, I'll take that on board, right? And another important point is that we also have to identify the reason why that state was manifested in reality. If it's happening in your life, some part of you values it, right? Deep down in your subconscious, from long ago and far away, right? Usually some kind of safety pattern, and so that's why that discomfort is there. And so as we do the creation, discreation, we're also saying, okay, well, I get that's a safety pattern. How can we preserve safety, but then have it be something different that doesn't have to limit us, right? How can we upgrade the system, if you will? Yeah.
I really love that you touch base on that, because a lot of times when there's something that we've identified as a problem, we're really just focusing on it as this is something I need to clear or remove. There's a problem where a lot of times within the healing journey, there is this underlying aspect of it that it's serving us in some way. And until we know how it's serving us, then we can't really shift and transform it until we get a new method in there to really help us shift and clear that. So I really love that you touched based on that, because I think that really helps open up a different perspective when we're looking at change and transformation and those fears of letting maybe parts of ourselves go to step into that new space.
Yeah, I mean, it's this, it's all in divine order. We can never get anything wrong. There's no wrong state. We're not broken. We're not
Mm-hmm.
wounded, right? It's any state of discomfort or disturbance. There is a value to some part of you, and being able to, it's an inner conflict,
Yeah.
right? So being able to get both of those parts together. Let's talk to the part that values this. Let's talk to the part that wants to change it. And let's introduce those parts and let
Yeah.
them have a conversation, and let's stay solution focused here,
Mm-hmm.
because we've come up with these things, usually in the first few years of life to keep ourselves safe, belonging, loved, to prove that we're good enough. These are all kind of the base human experiences that we're striving for. So
Mm-hmm.
um, that's also the good news, right? Spoiler alert, right? There's only a few things it boils down to. So
Yeah.
when you're aware of that it's going to come down to some kind of deeper level of fear, survival, belonging, it allows us, to be able to see it with gratitude,
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to say, oh, okay, I get this as a safety pattern, but you know what? It was maybe when I was two, but now it's actually causing the opposite effect.
Mm-hmm.
So and I know I'm way more safe now than, a helpless child, right? They can't raise themselves. You need to have people around you. And it's like to be able to find that safety, that deeper level of safety here, right? To know, oh, I'm an adult now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to worry about that so much. And it allows that transformation to happen, because I think, fundamentally we're just releasing triggers from childhood, you
Mm-hmm.
know, when we're healing, and ancestral entanglements that predate our birth when we come
Mm-hmm.
in, so we're just disentangling some of these old patterns that are deeply embedded in our subconscious. So this is where it's really useful to have somebody to work with, because we can't see these things in our blind spot.
Mm-hmm.
These deep patterns in the subconscious that our survival is dependent upon is locked away and compartmentalized in the deeper reaches of the subconscious. And it's not going to open it up if we're trying to go, come on, we got to get you out of here. It's time to go. Let's, right. But if we
Yeah.
go, hey, talk to me. What is it? What do you need? What's going on? Right. And be able to reach it with compassion,
Mm-hmm.
then it will open up, and we can, often see that the fear of the fear is worse, right? You open the
Yep.
chest and it's like, oh, there's nothing in it. You were just
Mm-hmm.
afraid to open it up,
Yeah.
right? In that way, because we have to come at it with kindness and compassion and a heartfelt place, in order to understand the benefit, and also to understand what the resources, the things that we've gained from that difficult time, right? Even if it's
Yeah.
a difficult lifetime, right? To see that, oh, okay, well, it's helped me become more resilient, more clever. It's helped me be stronger. It's helped me be more goal oriented, whatever that is, to carry all those resources forward,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that helps secure your foundation. And then we can just let that old pattern away, right? So it's like, okay, this is good. We can let go of that, and really letting go. I think that's an important phase of letting go, is to say, oh, this has served me for so long, and look at all these beautiful things I've learned and grown from this difficult place. And you know what, it doesn't have to be difficult anymore. I can learn and I can grow and I can be free of that pattern and move forward.
Those are amazing. You're really hitting on, I think, some really important key elements that maybe a lot of people aren't aware of. Like you began with, there's nothing innately wrong with anybody. And these are tools and techniques and mechanisms that we have utilized up into a point where then it's no longer helpful for us. And I think for a lot of people, they take it on as there's something wrong with me, or I'm not good enough, or there's something inherently within ourselves that just shouldn't be there and it's not right. And so I love that you put a different wording and language around that of, no, this is always serving you. It has been, and now it's to a point where you're ready to release that or shift and change. So thank you for pointing out those, because I think that's really valuable insight for people just moving forward in their personal lives, their journeys, to realize that it's nothing wrong with you as a person. You're already whole, you're already complete, you're just evolving and growing.
Yeah. And we just need to polish it up. Like what you're seeking is already within. It's just gotten a little, tarnished or hidden or protected. So what we're doing is we're kind of taking the chrysalis off so the butterfly can come out. This is within, and we just have to find our way back home, right? Because wherever we come from, source, God, divine, right? That is our ultimate, our first existence. And then coming into the human form and thinking there's something wrong with us, or even that problem focused view. This was something from a consciousness medicine perspective, taking these different courses and certifications. I got tired of talking about problems all the time. I was like, can't we talk about good stuff, right? Nope. We got to roll up our sleeves, we got to identify the problem, we got to crawl in the problem, and that's how we're going to get rid of the problem. And yes, there is a time and a place for that. And there also comes a point where if you put your more creative attention on the problem than you do on what you're trying to create, guess what you're going to end up with? More problem, right? So this idea of where's the life force energy of, it's in there somewhere. I just need to polish, and I just need to break a little bit here, and I need, right? It's like you're uncovering the beauty of life rather than saying this is a problem I need to get rid of. It's a whole different approach that I think, I really love it. I hope it's a new paradigm of healing, and it's also great for practitioner longevity, right? Because I've been doing this almost 20 years, and I want to celebrate people and what they've achieved in their lives. And okay, yeah, we've had difficulties, we have triggers, we have things that need to be released. But when I'm in a session with somebody or working, I'm holding the fullness, right, of who they can be, right? And what I've learned is that actually when you do that, the sparks fly and show you the issues, rather than let's just go unpack all the issues and put them all out in the sun and pick which one to work with. When you actually focus on bringing more life force energy through, the disturbances make themselves known, right? They're just little sparks that fly. So it's actually having a similar, if not better effect, I think, and being able to stay on that kind of what's the desired state. This is NLP, which is, what consciousness medicine is based on as well, neuro-linguistic programming of the desired state and the present state, And I've learned just really building that desired state up and holding that desired state shows you all the, when the light gets brighter, so do the shadows, right? They'll show up, and that's how you can identify them. And it allows you to move those so much more quickly, because as we release, we have to renew. That's one thing I often see, like release, release, release. I have clients that come to me and they're exhausted, and they, it's like they've been on the personal growth path for a while, and they've released and they've detoxed and they've done all these things. And I said, well, how are you filling your life force tank? How are you filling that existential tank? And they're not, because they're so focused on, and it's, of course, this is what happens, right? You have a health crisis or whatever's going on, you have to put your focus on to get through it. But as you release, you have to remember to renew, to build, to really amplify that life force energy. And that's where true healing comes from. When you're so full of life force energy that the problems are on the periphery, right? They're not all consuming, and you can work with them more resourcefully.
Sounds like such a phenomenal technique and modality that you're utilizing to help people. In your experience, what distinguishes consciousness medicine from other conventional and alternative healing practices?
I think the main thing is that the idea of the body matrix, which is we're not just a physical body, we're also an energetic body, emotional body, ancestral, and spiritual, right? So physical, energetic, emotional, ancestral, and spiritual. we all have, this is what our body is, right? And so if you go to a chiropractor, for example, and you get your spine adjusted, or, physiotherapist or massage, and the muscles are all nice and relaxed, right? But you have a disturbance in your energy body, right?
Mm-hmm.
From childhood or whatever that is, that issue in your physical body is never really going to go away, right? A low back is a good example of that. Low back pain. Yes, it can be your discs being compressed, it can be nerves, it can be all these things in the physical. But from the energetic perspective, we have to look at the energetics of that area of the body, the sacral chakra, the emotional center.
Mm-hmm.
What are the unresolved emotions? Support. It's often not feeling supported, carrying the burden for your family from the ancestral perspective,
Yeah.
and from the spiritual perspective, there's just a leak in your fields. You can't hold that life force energy. So if you're just looking at back pain from one or singular modalities, it'll get you so far, but then you've got to go you know all around, versus a
Mm-hmm.
one-stop shop of, well, let's look at it from a consciousness medicine perspective, where we look at it from all the perspectives as we work through that, because that allows for deep change and lasting change, which
Mm-hmm.
is something I really developed this work on, because I would witness miracles in seminars I took. And then I'd see the person maybe the next seminar and say, oh, how was that? How's your whatever that was healed? Oh, it's back again. And I think,
Mm.
hmm, my scientific brain is always going, huh, that's interesting. I wonder why that is. Right.
Yeah.
And that's eventually where I came to, it's like, oh, you have to look at it across all those bodies. So I think that's what really kind of sets it apart.
Mm-hmm.
And I see it as a complementary approach. Alternative healing, maybe I see complementary, in that the greatest stories I have of people healing and transcending is in a complementary way,
Mm-hmm.
using both allopathic and alternative together to supercharge the work. So it's a good complement to everything. It's not going to interfere with, treatment. It's only going to amplify it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
for example, a medication, we can work to make it more effective and minimize side effects. And so it really helps the whole thing. So we're all in this together, I think.
Yeah.
I don't like to exclude anything, but I think that's the main thing. It just sets it apart, that it looks across all the different modalities, and that it is such a complementary thing. It's not going to interfere, with traditional approaches. It's only going to supplement it, be a bonus to it.
Yeah. So I'm hearing it's like another tool on the tool belt.
Hmm. Definitely. Yeah.
Could you provide any examples of how these layers are approached and interconnected in the healing process? You talked about the body matrix, the physical, energetic, emotional, ancestral, and spiritual. So how could those interconnect in that healing process?
Hmm. So let's see. Let me think of an example of what's up for people at the moment. Like fatigue is a good example, right? Like, let's talk about that. Yeah, fatigue, we know on the physical, I'm tired, I'm not motivated, right? I'm not sleeping well.
Mm-hmm.
There's nutrition, there's all of these things that are going to play into fatigue. Okay. But if you're just treating the physical body, right, you're never going to get all the way well, right? Because what's happening on the energy body is there's going to be leaks. For
Mm-hmm.
example, we've got our 7 main chakras I like to work with, the central channel, and then our auric layer, and they're all related, right? And our chakras are coming online at different ages, from birth for
Mm-hmm.
the root up to 30 before the crown is finished. So anything significant that happens or traumatic during the ages of development of the energy center is going to cause a pattern of disturbance, right? Or a leak
Mm-hmm.
in the auric layer, for example. So if fatigue is present, there's not enough life force energy. There's not enough fundamental energy in the system, because there's leaks,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because the system's not functioning optimally, it's not aligned, or there's leaks, right? So we have to really work with the energy body to align the chakras, clear them, right? Because that distributes the energy across the system, which then mirrors our auric layer. We have a strong central channel. We have aligned and spinning chakras. Our auric layer is going to be very strong and contained. That will allow us to be able to hold that energy, for example, right?
Mhm.
Fatigue is also related to stress. Okay, stress comes in many forms.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just about, oh, I'm so busy or this and that. Emotional stress, unresolved emotions causes so much stress on the emotional body that's going to trickle down through all of the bodies and show up in the physical. So taking a look at that unresolved emotion, either from a significant experience in life, or in adult life or childhood, all of these things, you're really going to have to take a look at to relieve that emotional stress. Right?
Mhm.
The ancestral body is the same. We get entangled in our suffering of the past to try to heal the family, to belong, to ultimately survive. And it's like the strings on the puppet,
Mhm.
right? So we're acting out of our ancestral loyalties subconsciously to repeat the past, right? To try to make things better for our ancestors. These are called ancestral entanglements. And that's exhausting, right?
Yeah.
So the ancestral body not only is your experience, but you're holding the experience for your entire ancestral lineage, right? That's like carrying a backpack full of rocks. Like that's
Mhm.
going to tire you out, right? It's
Yeah, that's a
going
lot.
to fatigue, right? And then the spiritual body, again, not enough life force energy, right? That, how are you building your life force energy? What are you doing to fill your existential tank? Whether it's spiritual practices, yoga, meditation, walking
Mhm.
in nature, and making sure that you self-care, that you do that, right? So that's an example of fatigue and how across all of the elements, you've got to take a look at those in order to address it on all those levels. And I see from you nodding, you're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, there is
Mhm.
that component to it and that component to it. So,
Yeah.
so that's an example.
And that's a really, like you mentioned, a very common one. I think it's pretty fitting. A lot of people, there's that space we wake up sometimes, we're just like, oh, like you're just already exhausted and tired. And a lot of people might not know where that's coming from. So I love that you pointed out that it's probably, there's sometimes where it's not just the body, there's all these different elements and pieces to this whole that we are.
Yeah, and the physical body is usually the last place it shows up.
Mhm.
So, when it shows up in the physical, it's been in the non-physical for a while, right?
Mhm.
So, paying attention to the signs that your body is telling you are essential, right? Your body doesn't get pain or disease or illness for the fun of it or to torture you, right?
Mhm.
It's trying to tell you alarm bells, something's wrong. We got to look at this. Stop, self-care, take a look at this. Your body is
Yeah.
just trying to help you, right? And so many people will push through it, right? Again, this is an emotional, right? It's like, oh no, fear
Mhm.
of not succeeding, fear of not being able to provide for family, fear of not being good enough will
Mhm.
make people push through the signs that their physical body is telling you, hey, we need to rest. And then the
Yeah.
physical body is going to continue to go until a breaking point where it will choose to rest for you if
Mhm.
you don't listen to the messages early enough on, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so that kind of connection, the mind body spirit, connection is quite important. And some people, it's something that can be trained, really. We all have it within us to be able to
Mhm.
listen to that, but I don't think, we have to get quiet and still enough to be able to hear what our body is telling us. But I think that's a beautiful journey. I've done it myself, where it allows you to trust your body,
Mhm.
communicate, say, okay, what is it that you need, and how can we get through this? I have a history of doing endurance athletics for, almost 30 years in different forms,
Oh.
not so much now in my younger years, more so, right? Where
Mhm.
triathlons or, long distance events where there comes a point where, the triathlon or the last stage, the last part of it where the body's going, whose idea was this? Excuse me.
Yeah.
Like, can I just, no,
Mhm.
and it really helped me hone that mind body connection. I went, okay, body, I hear you, right? we're on the bike or we're on the run. We got to just get to the finish line. What is it that you need, right? Do I need to adjust my blood sugar? Do I need to adjust my body temperature? Do I need to adjust my electrolytes, right?
Yeah.
In this connection with my body. And I found with the intention, I could make it happen in my body and find that place to be able to find that endurance, which was better than any personal growth. Like those endurance kinds of events for me were, the places I got to, the deeper level of connection with myself, surpassed many of the seminars I've taken, from that perspective. But again, it was one of those things I was like, oh, do you mean I can just tell my blood sugar to balance and it'll balance? Oh, okay. Oh, I can just bring my body temperature down. If it's a super hot race and I'm overheating, I can just adjust my body temperature with my intention. Oh, okay. Yeah. And I'm not the only one that can do it. I mean, there's loads of stories, right, of the monks that meditate in the snow with no clothes on and melt the snow around them by making their body temperature heat. I mean, these are the things that we can do. We all have that ability within us.
I'm really hearing, the name of this consciousness medicine, how as you're speaking about it, there's so much intention and focus and listening and going with your inner guidance. And it's amazing to hear these different layers and how you've brought them all together where it's this cohesive whole and tuning into that space. Like you mentioned in the beginning, this vortex, this bubble, this going into, I think it's just phenomenal. And it's a different perspective that's really transformative, I think, even in mindset, but in healing and medicine and treatment. Is there any specific condition or ailment that consciousness medicine is particularly effective in treating?
It treats everything,
Everything?
right? Because it's like, if we can think it, we can treat it. And this is the beautiful thing about expanding beyond the allopathic model, where it's observable. We need to have biochemistry. We need to have, those kinds of reactions in order for those things to work. It's like, okay, well, if I can think it, for example, working with smoking, people trying to stop smoking, right? And reducing tobacco receptors on cells. How would you do that from the allopathic? Like, I don't even know how you could measure, right? Receptors on a cell, right? If we can think it, we can treat it with intention, right? So, in my work, I remember going, oh, okay, because I know the genetic level and cellular molecular biology. I know it, right? So I know what a cell looks like. I know how the receptors work. I know all of that. And I go, I wonder if I just minimize the tobacco receptors on somebody's cell who's trying to quit smoking so they don't have that nicotine withdrawal, the nicotine receptors, they don't have the withdrawal from it. And then that's easier for them to quit. And it works, right? Right? So you can think it, you can treat it, really. Yeah. So
I love that. In what way do you foresee consciousness medicine contributing to the broader landscape of just healthcare and well-being in the coming years?
Well, I like the quote from Albert Einstein, who said, way back, right? He said, the future of medicine will be a medicine of frequencies, right? And so this was back when he was, he won his Nobel Prize for the wave particle duality. Like when quantum physics was becoming available, right? Where science, they no longer could explain it under the terms of, regular Newtonian science. Einstein was on the cusp of that. At the beginning, he said, no, didn't believe in quantum physics. It's rubbish. But as the scientist that he is, he couldn't, he's, observing it in his own science. He was like, oh my gosh, this, so I love that, and I hope that, right, that new medicine, is a medicine of frequencies. Again, I think the complementary approach, because, I worked in that industry and biotech where, I developed, was part of developing some of those pharmaceuticals and, of like the pharmacogenomics of how do we look at somebody's genetic makeup and make a compound that's going to be super effective for them, right?
Yeah.
Which we need for these, some of these states, some of these disease states. So I think that there is a place for medicine there is also, I'd love to see an expansion of awareness and not be competitive with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of, oh, if we have these alternative approaches, then people won't, go. I think we can't do without either one, right? So I'd love to see a deeper weaving together of it. Um, and so, I'd love to be able to see more studies and things done, and clinical research.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to kind of get into that myself, of being able to bring a little bit more scientific credibility to, these alternative complementary, approaches. But it can be a little difficult, because if it's not observable and your conscious awareness can affect the results, how do you control for that?
Yeah,
Right?
I agree.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So yeah. So I really hope, do I see allopathic medicine going away and complementary approaches taking over? Probably not. But, these approaches like Ayurveda or Chinese medicine that have been
Mm-hmm.
around for so long, right, that take into account more than just the physical biochemistry,
Yeah.
right? And I think that the allopathic model is starting to move into that. They're calling it lifestyle medicine or functional medicine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's not just about physical, it's also, well, what's happening in your life, a little bit of coaching, counseling, and taking a broader view of that, so, I'm hoping that, but within a system where a doctor has 15 minutes to be with somebody, it takes a little bit longer to really do a bigger breadth of, a session. And so systems need to be in place to be able to support that
Yeah.
as well.
From one scientist to another, I completely agree with all of this. And
Mhm.
it's just amazing to connect with somebody who's in that same space where there's really grounding this into scientific research and understanding, looking at the quantum level, how energetic works, so that it can reach a broader audience and have this deeper conscious understanding, even what's going on within these sessions. Because, you mentioned before, there's this space where before it was just labeled like this is a miracle. But from a scientific perspective, what is that? What's going on? What are the energetics behind that? And I love how there's this space of just like, we need to look at this, we need to research it and ground it. And I completely agree with that Einstein quote that you used, vibration, frequency, energy, looking at the energetics of stuff, because we are all energy. Our world is made up of it. And if we have a deeper understanding of that, we can have a deeper understanding of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And be open-minded about it. I mean, I've
Mm-hmm.
worked with some cases like, a young boy who has cystic fibrosis, and the medical model is, no, this is the treatment. Nobody recovers from it. It's in a box. And
Yeah.
they were doing the conventional treatments, of course, and also doing treatments with consciousness medicine and the ancestral healing work. And he was improving, the doctors, because they're in their box, this is what I have
Mm-hmm.
to do. The nurses would pull his mom aside and go, what are you doing? Right? Like
Mm-hmm.
they were open-minded enough to ask the questions of, wow, we really see a tremendous improvement here beyond what we see in others. What are you doing? And asking the
Yeah.
questions and being open-minded to that, versus locked into, well, this is the way of being, and this is what we have to do. So and I do think the world, consciousness, just with everybody, it's advancing. People are more aware and open, and aware just of everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Diversity, all of these things, where greater awareness has just shining its light collectively. So hopefully it will shine as well in the healing,
Yes.
complementary, and traditional models as well.
Well, thank you for sharing with everyone your amazing experience and wisdom. As we wrap up, is there anything else you would like our listeners to know?
I think that, it's really simple. Sometimes people hear, oh, consciousness medicine and all these different, it's like, it's so simple in its approach, because all you have to do is find your way home, find
Mm,
your way to the divine within that is in there and has been all along. Right? And the
yes,
rest is just noise. So it is so simple, right? And it's a birthright to have full health, well-being, and be full of life force energy.
amazing.
Yeah.
Could you please share with our viewers how they could connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. My website is www.consciousness-medicine.com. I also have a podcast called Healing Codes, which are 15-minute episodes, guided meditations for different healing approaches with using consciousness
Mhm.
medicine. And then I'm also on social media. Instagram is Wellness Wisdom with Julie. So feel free to follow me there as well.
Beautiful. As we conclude today's deep dive into consciousness medicine with the incredible insight shared by our great guest, Julie Williams, I hope this episode has left you feeling inspired and intrigued by the profound connection between quantum physics, healing arts, and the human experience. Julie's journey and experience has shed light on the transformational power of consciousness medicine, showcasing its unique ability to address our diverse layers of the body matrix, the physical, energetic, emotional, ancestral, and spiritual, melding science and sacred healing practices. We've explored how this innovative modality distinguishes itself from conventional and alternative healing, opening our minds to its effectiveness in treating various conditions and intricate interplay of the practitioner's consciousness in the healing process. Thank you for joining us on this enlightening journey.
Great. Thank you so much, Tiffany.
Thank you.